Get down here, Merc.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael and welcome to Prudent Gaming. Final Fantasy VII Remake is here and I recently finished it after clocking in around 36 hours and 3 tries on Sephiroth. A full-length gaming experience for the first section of the original game, Square-Enix has added a lot of new things to this game to pad it out and increase the length, chiefly among them are the side quests. Side quests are a way to add more content to a game to give players a break from the main journey, promote exploration and give bonuses to make said journey a little easier. They can be a way to enrich the experience and make the player care about the world that they find themselves in, and also give experience to gain a few levels and make the characters stronger. Some games have excellent side quest designs, such as The Witcher 3, which we'll look at later on, and other games put themselves in as an afterthought. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy VII Remake seems to fall into the latter category. Final Fantasy VII Remake side quests are not acceptable, and I'm going to explore why and how Square-Enix could potentially do better in the next part.
Seems a whole bunch of giant rats have been congregating in the vacant lot lately.
Before diving deeper into the side quests of Final Fantasy VII Remake, let's go over the different types of side quests found in most games, and by most games I mean RPGs and MMOs. Side quests struggle to vary from game to game because they're confined within a short list of categories. They tend to be the same quest with a different coat of paint. An enemy name change here, a different sword reward here. These types of side quests include Kill Quest, Delivery or FedEx Quest, Gather or Fetch Quest, and Escort Quests. Let's do a brief overview of these. Kill Quests require the player to kill a number of creatures or enemies and, in some cases, bring back a trophy as proof. By the way, you'll be seeing a lot of World of Warcraft footage for this part of the video. Only the starting zone though, I wasn't going to pay a subscription just for this video, my WoW days are done. Delivery or FedEx Quests has the player taking an item from one location to another, with the player sometimes being required to first go search for the item to be delivered. Gather or Fetch Quests are most criticised for being tedious and pad out a game's length, though the same can be said for all these types of quests if not implemented well, and you'll see Final Fantasy VII Remake is no exception. Fetch Quests have the player set off to collect a number of items either from enemies or the environment and bring them back to the quest giver. Quest givers will sometimes tell the player to keep what they found, so that was a waste coming back for permission when I could have just taken your precious apples and run away with them. Finally, Escort Quests require the player to protect an NPC as they move through an enemy infested area. Extremely unpopular in the gaming community because the majority are done poorly and have the NPCs moving faster than the character's walking speed but slower than their running speed. Reminds me of being a kid when I would need to constantly run in short bursts to keep up with my dad on the way to the pub. Examples of almost all the side quest mentions can be found in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Thankfully, Square-Enix decided not to put any escort missions in the game. It would have been really frustrating if there were points that brought the game to a halt and forced you to walk slowly.
Mako poisoning. Happened while Jesse was doing a show with the Gold Saucer.
It doesn't take long to get to the first area of side quests, and with Cloud being a merc for hire trying to build a name for himself, it's only natural to want to help out the town.
Yep. Connections get you jobs. Jobs build your rep. And more rep gets you better connections.
How do I start?
The first example I want to present here is a quest named Rat Problem, and is the most default side quest the game could give the player. In the Sector 7 slums, Tifa gives Cloud a small tour of the area, and one of the places they stop by is the item store. The store owner tells Cloud about some were-rats and doom rats that made their way into the store, causing havoc. Of course, it's now up to the player to go to the rat's nest and dispose of the rodents. Like most of the side quests, Rat Problem doesn't provide any real challenge and the rats are easy to kill. Rat Problem is a great example of a kill quest. Lost Friends is another quest picked up in the Sector 7 slums and given to the player by Betty, a young girl who seems to have lost some of her friends. Betty describes them to Cloud as having long arms and legs, a little skinny, liking food, treats from nice people and small spaces.
Oh yeah, and they're all cats.
Now, the player needs to hunt around Sector 7 slums looking for Betty's 3 cat friends. It's not hard to find them, as Tifa will mention hearing something after some meowing can be heard. This isn't a guide on the quest, so I'll let you find the places yourself, but once they've been found, speak to Betty and Cloud will tell her that they ran away, and surprise, the cats rock up. 3 chapters into the game, we've had a rat quest and a cat quest. If anyone's hoping for a dog quest, you're going to be disappointed. Chapter 9 gives the player a FedEx quest in a long line of fetch quests. The Party Never Stops is a fetch quest chain that has Cloud trying to bring the clothing store owner back to the clothing store to his son. Before he'll go back, however, Cloud must find the clothing store owner's inspiration. If only you could hear air quotes. I won't go through this entire quest line because I want to focus on one part. At one point, Johnny becomes ill after eating at the restaurant, so the restaurant owner gives Cloud a medicine voucher to be used at the pharmacy. Taking the medicine voucher to the pharmacy starts a quest called Medicine Delivery, which asks the player to deliver medicine to the people around Wall Market. The level of the player's cleansing materia determines how helpful they'll be in this quest. My level was 2 and meant that I had to deliver medicine to 2 different people somewhere in Wall Market. Rat Problem, Lost Friends and Medicine Delivery are just 3 examples of the quests in Final Fantasy VII Remake. There are a total of 26 side quests, 24 for the player to complete in a single playthrough, and the vast majority of them are made up of fetch quests and kill quests, and it's simply unacceptable. So why are the side quests in Final Fantasy VII Remake unacceptable? The short answer, they're shallow. Way too shallow. Final Fantasy VII Remake takes place only in Midgar, and Square-Enix proudly stated how the Midgar section had been expanded upon to become a full 30+ hour experience. Midgar took approximately 8 hours in the original Final Fantasy, which begs the question, what has been added to extend this? Side quests are obviously some of the extra hours, but in this case, less would have been more. Shinra is bleeding the planet dry, there is a devilishly handsome super soldier hellbent on destroying the planet roaming around, and Betty wants Cloud to find her cats.
You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain?
If you don't let me sort out this big bad, then you will lose your cats forever, dear. Although it would clear up the rat problem. Shallow side quests are a problem in most RPGs and MMOs, but I must say this particular attempt to shovel them into Final Fantasy VII Remake was a lackluster attempt from Square. These types of side quests aren't unacceptable in themselves, but it's the way they're implemented. Side quests should be a way to enrich the experience for the player, giving them more information and making them care about the people and locations in the world they're trying to save. The player should feel like they want to complete side quests and explore the world on their own simply because they wanted to, not to get that tiny bit more experience. I also wonder if the navigational tools have a negative impact. Quest givers tell the player where to go and usually give a detailed description of the area they should head towards, but none of that matters when there's a large marker placed on the minimap or compass, telling the player exactly where to go. 9 times out of 10, the player will head directly towards the mark instead of listening to the quest giver's directions and exploring themselves. Now, this is an entirely different problem in video games, but it really doesn't help when the quests being given are already so basic and bland. Players need a break from the main quests at times, and side quests are intended to be that break. Final Fantasy VII Remake is no different in that respect. Cloud is a merc, so it would make sense in the context of the character, but the player needs more. The player needs something to latch onto.
This sucks.
I have some ideas on how Square-Enix and other developers and quest designers can do better in future games. The Witcher 3 is heavily referenced when talking about great side quests in video games, and I'm going to be another voice adding to the sea of droning, singing its praises. Obviously I'm not going to talk about every side quest in The Witcher 3, as that would take too long. This is mainly about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'd very much like to see my son grow up. There is, however, one specific side quest I would like to talk about named A Tower Full of Mice. A Tower Full of Mice is a secondary quest in The Witcher 3, which takes place in the Fyke Isle Tower after Geralt has taken Kira Metz's boat to Fyke Isle. Using the lamp given to him, Geralt must investigate the tower full of rats to see the spirits of the dead and find a mage's lab at the top. A body is found in the lab, and when using the lamp is found to belong to the former lord's daughter Annabelle, who tells Geralt of the mage Alexander and how he was experimenting with the rats and infecting them with a disease. One day, peasants came to the island to break into the tower and kill everyone there. Annabelle was terrified, so she drank a potion the mage had given to her, thinking it would kill her, but instead it only paralysed her. The invading peasants believed she was dead, and unfortunately so did the rats, and ate her alive. Geralt explains to Annabelle that the curse surrounding her on the island is born from hate and must be lifted by love. To do this, Annabelle must forgive her love Graham, who left her alone on the isle, and Geralt must take her bones to him to be buried. The player is then presented with a choice. Refusing Annabelle's request would have her reveal herself to be a plague maiden, not a good thing by the way, and will attack Geralt. He cannot defeat her until the curse is lifted, so he retreats to the nearby village to fetch Graham and take him back to the island to be forgiven. Graham explains to Annabelle that he did not mean to leave her on the island and that he still loves her. She asks him to prove it by kissing her. Doing this kills Graham and reunites them in death, lifting the curse. The second choice, which I blindly chose, has Geralt accept Annabelle's request to take her bones to her love. Geralt returns the bones to Graham and leaves, but right after, a scream can be heard coming from Graham's cabin. Upon returning, Geralt finds Graham to be killed and Annabelle revealed to be a plague maiden. Still not a good thing, by the way. The curse of Fyke Isle has been lifted, however Annabelle is free to roam the land, spreading the rat's disease. See how packed that one side quest was compared to the 3 I mentioned in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. A FedEx quest is wrapped up within these events, but the player doesn't notice this because there's so much more to it. There is a deeper narrative here that makes the player feel sorry for these two lovers, and I can tell you from my experience that I was shocked when Graham was killed. I felt like I'd let him down and brought ruin upon the land. A tower full of mice did not simply mean go and kill rats in this tower. And Final Fantasy VII Remake actually has a fantastic example of what a side quest should be, and it's not even a side quest. During Chapter 7, the player comes across a Shinra keycard and can be used to take components out of the upcoming boss Airbuster. There are a total of 6 Shinra keycards to find, but are completely optional. The player can choose not to remove any components, causing the Airbuster to be at full strength and providing more of a challenge. However, if the player decides to remove 6 components, the 6 components to remove is a choice in itself by the way, they can enter the armory later on and collect the components to be used either against the Airbuster or whenever they like through the game. It's the subtlety of this side quest that makes it more engaging and coaxes the player to take part.
They say a job well done is on reward. I say take everything that ain't nailed down.
What if the next part of Final Fantasy VII Remake had no side quests at all? Instead of side quests, the player could be encouraged to take part in side content, which is a big difference and promotes freedom of exploration for the player. NPCs wouldn't give the player laborious tasks to complete, which doesn't enrich the world. Areas should have activities for the player to want to take part in that provides a fun break from the serious action and net extremely helpful rewards to aid the player in the main quest. Final Fantasy IX features a minigame called Choco Hot Cold. Love it or hate it, it allows the player to find amazing items to help on the journey. Choco Hot Cold has the player riding a chocobo, digging around Chocobo Forest for treasure. Most of the time they'll find potions and such, but items called chocographs can be found, and these are the real treasure, or treasure map I should say. Chocographs gives the player a sentence which gives a vague description of a location somewhere on the world map, accompanied with a picture of said location. That's all they get, a sentence and a picture. No map marker or compass pointing to the locations. It's down to the player to ride a chocobo on the world map and discover these locations to dig up some of the best equipment in the game. The original Final Fantasy VII had the option of players to take up chocobo breeding. Catching chocobos involved finding chocobo tracks and using a special chocobo lure materia and feeding it Gasal greens to catch it after an encounter. Chocobos then need to be trained by racing them at an amusement park named Gold Saucer and can be bred to make special chocobos which can be used by the player to navigate the world map more efficiently and to reach otherwise inaccessible areas and net them great rewards such as the Knights of the Round materia, the most powerful summon in the game. It takes a lot longer to do, but the rewards are much more useful and the activities themselves are more enjoyable than finding 3 lost cats. Chocobo Sam owns the Chocobo stable in Wall Market, and one of his stable hands gives Cloud the task to find 3 runaway chocobos. Finding the chocobos open up fast travel routes around Midgar. Naturally, their locations are marked on the map when the player tries to use the fast travel system, which makes finding them very easy. At each location, enemies appear for the player to kill and Gasal greens are given to the big birds, calming them down and opening the fast travel route. A much more interesting way of opening the fast travel points would be the idea of Chocobo Sam wanting to open new routes but lacking the chocobos to open them. Cloud and the gang would have to travel to known chocobo gathering spots and enter into a scenario where they would need to corner and catch the birds using Gasal greens and a chocobo lure materia. Once chocobos are caught, Cloud has to ride them to a nearby stable hand for the bird to be trained and the new fast travel route to be opened. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a fantastic game, but it's unfortunately padded out with meaningless and boring side quests. Time feels a little wasted after carrying them out because of their simplicity and the inability to provide more information about the environment and characters. Rewards are severely lacking, so obtaining them doesn't fill the player with any sense of achievement, which causes a negative impact on what is overall a great game. Square-Enix should take a closer look at the likes of The Witcher 3 if they are to add more side quests, but I believe the need for different side content is strong. Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you didn't know, is a remake of Final Fantasy VII, which was packed full of optional side content to give the player tough challenges with big rewards to incentivize the player to take part without handholding. Taking more from the original will provide a deeper experience for players and a greater sense of familiarity and nostalgia for long-time fans. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 has incredible potential, and I want to see it lived up to.
Feels like we're flying high these days.
Now, more than ever.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up because that really helps out, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more videos just like this one. Let me know your thoughts on the side quests in Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you haven't picked up Final Fantasy VII Remake yet, then I suggest my video unboxing the deluxe edition of the game on screen now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.